If you are interviewing for nurse practitioner jobs right now, or you're about to start looking, I want you to notice something that you're probably doing without realizing it. You are trying to get picked. You are being agreeable, low maintenance, easy to say yes to because you want to be the one that they choose. And that instinct, the instinct to get chosen, is the thing that walks NPs straight into the jobs that exhaust them, that underpay them, and that push them out of the profession, leaving and feeling disillusioned. To show you why, I want to take you to a cattle auction I stood in front of in a small town in Oman. So here are the three things I want to show you. Why the NP job hunt feels like a cattle auction, and why that instinct to get picked is what is quietly costing you. And how to walk into your next interview as the person doing the picking instead of the person hoping to get picked. Section 1, the auction and the buyer's mindset. Let me start with the auction itself because the picture here matters. A cattle auction is a very organized, orderly type of thing. It runs on a routine that everybody in the square understands. You've got the sellers on one side and you've got the buyers circling around them. The money moves, the cattle moves, and the whole process keeps repeating. Everyone in there knows the rules. Everyone except, of course, the one who's for sale. Now, think about the buyer. The buyer's entire job in that square is to spend the least amount to get the very most. And that is not cruelty. That is literally the assignment. A good buyer walks away having paid as little as possible for the best thing possible. And if they overpay, they did their job badly. So hold that picture in your mind, because this is the exact posture a hiring employer brings to an interview. They're trying to get the most capable NP that they can find for the least they can pay on the terms that are most convenient to them. That's not a personal attack on you. That it's not a sign that they're bad people. It's the assignment that they walked in with. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Most of us as NPs who are interviewing for these roles walk into that same room trying to be the most appealing thing at the auction, agreeable, low maintenance, grateful to be considered. And we are working hard to get chosen, which means without ever realizing it, we are working hard for the buyer's advantage. This is not our own advantage. So before we go any further, let me be clear about this comparison because it matters. I am not comparing us as nurse practitioners to livestock. We are highly educated. We are skilled professionals. That is not in question here. What I'm describing is how it feels to sit across a table from people treating us like we are a dime a dozen, like we could be swapped out for anybody willing to do the same work for less money, and like the employer has to give us as little as possible in return. It feels demeaning. It feels frustrating. And in that moment, and I was the one on that side of the table, I was angry. But the anger doesn't change the position that you're in or that I was in. I was sitting in front of someone trying to get the best nurse practitioner they could for the least that they would have to pay, which is exactly what a person does when they are buying a head of cattle. Section 2. Why we walk in already feeling desperate. So if getting picked is such a losing posture, why do so many of us default to it? Why is that our first instinct? Well, because most NPs are not walking into an interview from a place of calm. They are walking in from a place of need, and that need usually takes one of two shapes. You might be the new NP looking for their first NP job, having finished school, having taken on debt, you passed your boards, and you just need to start working. So you need that first job, you need that income, you need the experience, and you need the proof to yourself that you can actually do this. And the pressure is real, so it's not irrational. The second is the experienced NP. You are already in a job that is grinding you down to the bone. You're trying to get out of that terrible situation. And when you're trying to escape something, almost anything on the other side starts to look better than where you're standing right now. So you stop evaluating the new place on its own terms. You start measuring it against how bad the current one feels. And here's the quiet thing that's happening underneath all that kind of pressure. You stop asking whether the new job is good, and you start hoping that it will be different. And different is not the same thing as better. And when you start moving fast just to get out of the situation that you cannot stand, you walk straight into something that's worse. And you will not find out how bad it is until you're already in it, because you never asked the questions that would have told you before you got yourself tied up into this place. The buyer in that square, they can smell need. So can an employer. Desperation is the one thing that makes this whole get picked dynamic work. The more you need this to work, the less you ask, and the more you accept. Your need to change your situation is real. And it's also the exact thing that the person across from you at this table is counting on. So let me say this plainly. You are allowed to want out of a bad job. You are allowed to need to start working. Neither one of those is a character flaw, but the way through is not to move fast and ask less. It's to slow down just enough to make sure that the next place actually is better than the place that you're trying to leave. Not that it's just newer. You don't need a change of scenery. You need a change of quality. Section 3, the asymmetry that nobody tells you about. Now, there is one place in the cattle auction and the job interview where they stop matching. They actually don't line up here. And this is the most important thing about all of this. The person who is, let's say, selling a goat has no stake in what happens after the sale. Once the money changes hands and the animal is gone, it might get eaten, it might get used for wool or milk or breeding. The seller has collected their price and walked away. Whatever the buyer extracts from that animal afterwards is no longer the seller's concern. You, as a nurse practitioner selling their labor, you're not in that position. When you take a job, you're not handing over a product and walking away. You are the one who still has to deliver on that sale and show up on Monday and show up on Tuesday and show up on the Tuesday after that and the Tuesday 3 months from now, delivering on that transaction every single day for as long as you hold the role. So the after sale is your whole life. It's the workload, the daily visit volume, whether the note gets finished inside your workday or whether it follows you home and you're doing it at your kitchen table at 9 o'clock at night. All of that is the part that the cattle seller never has to think about. And that is the exact part where you're going to be living in it. That is why walking in like a seller who's trying to close a sale is the wrong instinct. You're not selling a product with a clean handoff. You are agreeing to deliver a service under someone else's conditions over a long stretch of your professional life. And that deserves a very different posture than please pick me. Section 4. The day I quit a job that I hadn't even started. I want to tell you how I learned this because I did not learn this from a book. There was a stretch in my career where I was unexpectedly employed for 5 months. I left one job on Friday. That was my last day after I had given 6 full weeks of notice, and I was supposed to start a new job on the following Monday. During those 6 weeks that I was serving out my resignation notice period, something happened at the new place. The person who hired me had gotten fired. New leadership came in, and so when I came to work on that first Monday morning, the terms of the job had completely changed. I was handed a contract that I had never seen before. And when I tell you, had I seen that contract even a few weeks earlier, I would never have given my notice to the job that I wanted to leave. I mean, it was a bad job, but I wasn't desperate. I would not have taken this new job seriously at all if I had seen that contract before I had given notice, before my very first day at work. I would have kept on looking. So that particular day, it felt like I was ambushed. And the message underneath it was clear. My back was against the wall. So their posture was, sign this quietly and get to work. And on paper, That was true. My back really was against the wall. I had already let go of every other offer I had. I had turned those places down about 2 months earlier because I had a start date. I had a signed offer letter. I had already given my job notice. I withdrew my candidacy from a bunch of jobs that I was offered. And at this point, several weeks later, those jobs were already filled. And on the very first day of a brand new job, I quit. I did not sign terms that I had never agreed to, handed to me under pressure by people who I had never met. And then I was unemployed for 5 months. And this was an unplanned unemployment. And let me tell you what those 5 months looked like. My household went from 2 incomes down to 1. And I was eating through my savings just to stay afloat. And we economized in every way possible. And even doing all of that, there's only so long that that pattern can hold. And I knew that the clock was running. And I felt it every single month. Every check I wrote, to pay the mortgage, to pay the car note, the kids' tuition, the pull to just hurry up and replace that income was constant. It never went away. But I left the old job for many good reasons. And I was not willing to rush into something that would land me right back here at the meat auction, looking at this all over again in like a year. I would rather look for a good job over 5 hard months than sign into another version of the bad job that I had just left. I do not tell you any of this so that you would feel sorry for me. I tell it because that entire situation happened for one reason. I had let myself get picked before I had done the picking. I committed. I gave up my leverage, and I never confirmed in writing what I was actually walking into. And by the time the real terms had showed up, I had nothing left to negotiate with except my willingness to walk away from the table. And so that's what I did. So before I show you how to do this differently, how not to make my mistake, I want to give you one thing. My whole situation blew up because the things that would have protected me were never put in writing. I was handed a contract that I had never seen on day one. So I put together this free checklist. I call it Get It in Writing, and it lays out the 8 things you want in writing before you sign a contract. Not what you were told in the interview, but what is actually written down. The link is in the description below. Section 5, you are a revenue generator. All right. Let me change the way you're sitting in that chair. I'm going to fix your posture. You are in that interview for a reason. You hold a license and specialized training that let you do skilled clinical work that most people simply cannot do. And that employer that's on the other side of the table with you, they've got a vacancy to fill. That is not you showing up asking for a favor. That is 2 parties. Each one has something that they need from the other one. And I want to put a real number on your side of that. As a primary care nurse practitioner, you're generally considered a profitable hire when you generate 3 to 5 times your salary in revenue. So take the national median NP salary around $130,000 a year. 3 to 5 times that is somewhere between $390,000 and $650,000 a year. That is the revenue your work brings into that organization. And many of us are pulling in revenue far higher than that. The people who run these organizations, they understand that number very well. And it's almost never said out loud to the person who's actually generating that money. So when you walk in and you ask about your work conditions, your workload, your schedule, the support around you, you're not being difficult. You are a revenue generator, and asking questions about the conditions under which you will be generating that revenue is completely reasonable. And this matters more than just for mere fairness. It matters a lot because the way these roles are built, they're built to extract. The organization intends to get as much delivery out of you as it possibly can on the terms that are the most convenient to them. And if you never ask, the terms always default to their convenience. And that after sale life that you're living with just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. There's a saying that I use a lot. I got it from my mom. The favor you do today becomes your job description tomorrow. And that is exactly what that extractive version that one of these jobs does on you. It expands quietly around everything that you're willing to absorb. And your pay, it stays exactly where it started. So hear me on this. It's a job design problem, not a character flaw. The NPs getting eaten alive out there, they're not weaker, they're not less committed, they're not stupid. They walked in a hurry trying to get picked, and they got exactly the job that that posture produces. Section 6, how to do the picking. So here's what to do instead. Before anything tactical, there is one shift, and it changes everything downstream. You are not there to be chosen. You are there to decide whether you want to lend this organization your license and your labor. That's it. And when you move from will they pick me to asking every question to determine whether you will pick them, that changes things. It changes the answers when you actually have something to listen to. And there are 3 areas that I want you to be asking about directly. First is your daily patient volume, not the vibe of the place. What's the culture like? I want numbers. Ask what the daily visit volume looks like on a typical day, not the flattering version that they lead with. What you're listening for is whether the day was built to fit inside of the business hours that you are scheduled for, or whether it depends on you absorbing the overflow and taking that extra work home with you. Second is scheduled administrative time. Ask plainly how much administrative time is built into the scheduled day and where it sits on the schedule. What you're listening for is whether there is real scheduled time to close your notes, to handle your results, to walk through the day's messages, and whether all of that is expected to happen on time that does not officially exist within your work schedule. Third, you're going to ask about the support around you. Ask who handles the downstream work that your visits create. Who is calling patients? Who is chasing those prior authorizations? Who is routing the results and handling the refills? And what you're listening for here is whether there are actually hands on your day other than your own, or whether the whole "we're like a family here" is being asked to do the real work of the employer actually staffing the place the way they're supposed to. So pay attention to something beyond the answers themselves. Pay attention to how they react to being asked. An employer who gives you real answers, specific numbers, is telling you something. But the employer who bristles at being asked to describe the job that they're trying to hire you for, well, they're also telling you something important too. I have been on dozens of interviews, and I have walked away from the vast majority of them. Not because those places were terrible in some absolute sense, but because the extractive dynamic, that dynamic where it's clear that they just want to drain me, that comes across clearly once I get to asking the right question. Walking away is normal. It's a frequent outcome of someone doing the picking. It's supposed to be. I've done short videos on the specific questions that surface all of this, on a job offer that I turned down exactly for these reasons. I'll link them below. So let me leave you with this. If you want to be the one doing the picking, being the one to choose the employer and seeing what it actually looks like in practice, watch the video that I did on the offer I turned down, and the one that one question that NPs miss in interviews. Both are linked right below this in the description. And if you are evaluating an offer right now, grab the free Get It in Writing checklist. It is 8 things that you want to get in writing before you sign so that the job you accept is a job that you actually agree to. Your next employer is going to get their 40 hours out of you. So before you sign, make sure that you are the one who decided that this job was worth it. And I'll see you in the next video.